Welcome to the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best doubles strategies to improve your game and win more matches. I'm your host, Will Bocek. This podcast, my website, and my weekly newsletter all focus on the goal of better understanding the sport of doubles and helping players like you improve faster through actionable advice that you can use in your very next match. My goal is to provide the best doubles strategy resources in the world. And to do that, I study, analyze, and work with players at every level of the game, all the way up to the ATP and WTA tours. If you enjoy this podcast, I've created doubles strategy products that go even deeper if you want to take your doubles knowledge to the next level. At the end of this episode, I'll explain more about them, or if you want to learn more now, go to thetennistribe.com/products. Here's today's episode. Today, I'm going to share 4 lessons from Wimbledon that I noticed watching the championships over the last couple of weeks. I watched a lot of doubles in the morning here, my time in the US. Hopefully, you got to watch a lot of it as well. And I've always talked about how we can learn so much watching the pro players. I actually just did a member webinar last night, and we talked about watching pro players in between the points to notice how they are communicating with each other, how they're giving each other high fives, the different routines that they have in between points. But today I'm going to share 4 lessons that I learned from Wimbledon with specific match examples. So we're going to talk about baseline matchups, we're going to talk about moving at the net, serves and returns, and a few other things as well. Before I get to the lessons, a couple of quick announcements. So number 1, I will be in New York for the US Open, and there are 2 chances for you to come hang out and learn some doubles strategy. So number 1 is our doubles camp. It is going to be August 30th and 31st. I did this last year with a company based in New York called Add In, and we're doing it again. It was very popular last year. This year we're consolidating it into 2 days, but each day is going to be a bit longer than last year. My goal with this camp basically is for you to walk away with a very clear idea of the best tactics and strategy for your current game, and then also a very clear idea of the things that you need to work on, including specific drills that you can practice to keep developing your game. And then the second opportunity to hang out is new this year. So I've partnered with a Dallas-based company that provides luxury, all-inclusive travel trips. And we're calling this a rally trip. So it's a 3-day, 2-night US Open experience. You're going to stay in a hotel, a luxury hotel in Manhattan. You get US Open tickets included. You get to play tennis for 2 days. One of those days I'll be there helping out with some drills and running a clinic of sorts. I'll also be doing a double strategy presentation during one of the hotel happy hours that you'll get to attend. And then you'll also get to watch some doubles at the US Open with me so that we can learn from some of the pros. So it's going to be a really fun couple of days. That's September 2nd through 4th. So that is during week 2 or the final week of the US Open. If you're interested in either one, I'll link to them both in the show notes, or you can always email me if you have questions about it as well. A couple of quick membership updates. So I mentioned I had a webinar last night. We talked about teamwork. We had several people on there with lots of good questions, so that was great. But we're also going to be having the premium podcast episodes soon. So what those are going to look like, and this is for free or for non-members and members. So it's going to be episodes very similar to this, where it's me talking about strategy. And what I'm going to do is release part of the episode for free for anybody with the free podcast feed, but then members are going to have access to a premium podcast feed. And that's where you'll be able to hear the full episode, where I'll be diving deep into different strategy topics, answering member questions, different things like that. So it's going to be a really great added benefit for members who like to learn on the go if you're driving to work or walking your dog or exercising or whatever it is. Recently, we've had several premium lessons on the Returners Partner. When should you take the ball out of the air was another lesson that got some good feedback. And then I also broke down a WTA point that covered a very specific shot that is effective at the club level. So you can check out the memberships at thetennistribe.com/memberships and sign up there and see all of the member benefits as well. So let's dive into these lessons. We've got 4 lessons for you. The first one is about practicing for specific opponents. So I was watching a quarterfinal matchup between the eventual champions, Elise Mertens and Veronika Kudermetova. They beat Gabby Dabrowski and Erin Routliffe. I think it was in the quarterfinals. The score was 7-5, 7-6, I believe. And I flipped it on in the second set. And I mentioned this in the newsletter a few weeks ago, but I wanted to talk about it here on the podcast as well. So one of the things that Gabby and Erin like to do, and they're maybe the best team in the world at this, is both get to the net. A lot of the women's doubles teams on the WTA Tour play one up, one back. Gabby and Erin are probably the most net dominant team. And when they both get to the net, they squeeze the middle because that's generally a good strategy. Usually if you have a baseline ground stroke and both opponents are at the net, you want to hit through the middle to try to draw an error or a short ball or cause some kind of miscommunication. But Elise and Veronika knew this going into the match. Now, I'm going to kind of speculate here, but I imagine this is how it kind of played out. So they know that they draw Dabrowski and Routliffe in the next round. So in practice, if you're practicing for a team like that, knowing you're going to have ground strokes from the baseline against 2 players who are at the net, who cover a lot of ground, and who like to squeeze the middle, one good shot you can practice is a cross-court angle roll. And when I flipped it on in the second set, I noticed Gabby and Erin getting to the net, and then Elise and Veronika would both hit these low, slow, kind of cross-court topspin angles. And a few of them went for winners. A few of them, they drew a weak volley, which led to a short ball, which led to a winner. And then a few of them led to volley errors from Gabby and Erin. So this was a really smart shot to use. Now, I don't know for sure if they practiced it, but the lesson here for you is if you're playing a opponent that you know likes to have it play a certain style or use a particular tactic or get to a specific spot on the court, then in your pre-match warm-up, practice the shots that counter that. So if I'm playing Gabby and Erin, I'm obviously going to lose the match, but if I was, I would work on these cross-court angle rolls before the match. And Veronika and Elise may have done that. I don't know that for sure, obviously, but that would have been a good shot for them to work on. And even if they didn't, they certainly utilized it in the match. And what that did is Gabby and Erin had to adjust, and they started to play a little bit more spread out when they both got to the net, and that opened up the middle. And then Veronika and Elise were able to target the middle a bit more. So it's kind of an adjustment, counter adjustment, a game of cat and mouse where they're constantly tweaking their strategy and their tactics based on how the other team is tweaking theirs. So again, the key takeaway there, practice specific shots and tactics that you know you're going to use in the very next match. Practice it the day before, practice it in your warm-up, really work on those shots. So let's move on to lesson number 2. This was, I think it was another quarterfinal match. It was Shea Sue and Helena Ostapenko against Kalinskaya and Kirstea. And Kalinskaya and Kirstea won the first set. They end up losing the match in 3. And the thing I noticed in the second and third set was Kalinskaya was redirecting, and Kirstea did this a bit too, but Kalinskaya particularly, she would get in a baseline rally with Shea Sue. And that's a good matchup. So Kalinskaya is a top 30-ish singles player. Shea Sue's probably past her prime, certainly for singles she is. So you would favor Kalinskaya in that matchup. So what Kalinskaya would do, she would hit a few balls with Shea Sue, and then she would try to redirect down the line at Ostapenko because Ostapenko is not the strongest net player. Or she would try to lob down the line, or she would try to go a little bit bigger. But she's thinking about that the wrong way. If you are the better baseline player and you're in a rally, you have a good matchup. You don't need to prove that you have a good matchup by trying to hit a winner or trying to force an error. It's actually the opposite. The opponent, Shea Sue, needs to be the one that comes up with something special because Kalinskaya can sit in that rally all day. She hits a bigger ball. She hits a heavier ball. She's more consistent. She plays more singles nowadays. So she needs to just stay in the rally and let Shea Sue change direction or come up with something good. And what ended up happening was Kalinskaya would redirect and she'd either miss a shot down the line or she'd give Ostapenko a volley or maybe she'd try to lob down the line and miss or go bigger cross court and miss. She allowed Shea Sue to not have to stay in the rally. So think about that when you're on the court. If you are good from the baseline or if your partner's good from the baseline, you can kind of coach them a little bit on this. If you're in a good baseline to baseline matchup, you don't need to do anything special. It's up to the opponent to show that they can hang with you from the baseline. It's up to them to do something special. Let them create something. You don't need to. And ultimately, what will mostly happen is they're going to be forced to go at your net player or they're going to make an error because you're the more consistent, more solid, better overall baseline player. So that's a really important lesson about playing from the baseline. Lesson number 3, this is about movement at the net. So moving first. The finals I watched on, the women's finals I watched on Sunday. So Shea Sue and Ostapenko won the first set. Elise Mertens and Kudermetova won the second and third set. They are your champions. And what I noticed, especially in the third set, is even though she doesn't have the best volleys on the court, Veronika Kudermetova was the best net player on the court. And that is a court that has Shea Sue, who is one of the best net players in the world. For that particular set, she was moving first. So Ostapenko and Mertens would get in a baseline exchange. And Shea Sue, for whatever reason, I don't know if that was maybe part of the game plan where they felt like Ostapenko can win that cross-court matchup, and they weren't expecting Kudermetova to move, or maybe Shea Sue was hesitant for some other reason. I really don't know, but Veronika Kudermetova was moving first at the net during their partners' baseline exchanges, and that ultimately won them the match. She didn't make every volley. Not every volley was clean. I think she even hit a few off her frame that went in for winners, but she moved first. So this is kind of the opposite of the previous lesson about the baseline matchup. You know, from the baseline, we don't want to be the first one to redirect and change something up, especially if you are favored in that baseline matchup. But when you're at the net, you want to be the one that moves first, especially if the opposing net player is pretty aggressive as well. So there's a lot of variables here, but I noticed in that match, Kudermetova moved first, even though she wasn't or isn't as good of a net player, doesn't have as good a hands as Shea Sue. Moving first ultimately won them the Wimbledon title. And then the last lesson, let's move over to the men's side. The champions were Lloyd Glasspool and Julian Cash, who I had on the podcast recently. It was certainly one of my favorite recent podcast episodes, so I would highly recommend you check that out. He had a lot of good mindset and partnership tips as well. But this came down to serves and returns. Cash and Glasspool, and Julian talked about this on the podcast, they have two of the biggest serves on the doubles tour. And on grass, it becomes even more difficult to break serve. So that ultimately won out. And it's something that, I've reiterated this in the past. I'm going to talk about it again. It's something we don't practice enough as club level players. Now, this depends on your goals. if your goal is to play social tennis and just have fun and you're not that worried about winning, then serves and returns can be kind of boring. But if you're listening to the podcast, especially this far into this episode, then you probably want to win matches. And if you want to win matches, you've got to practice your serves and returns. Rinky Hijikata and David Pell were the second alternate team into the Wimbledon draw. They made it all the way to the finals, and their returns were one of the things that really got them through a lot of those matches. They both returned really well. When Rinky is returning well in particular, he's able to hit all the spots on the court with his return. He can rip line, he can go short angle cross, he can go through the middle, he has a lob return. And then David Pell had a huge down the line return in their semifinal match against the top seeds. And you could tell that they had worked on those returns and it paid off. So I'm going to give you a serve game that you can play that I've started teaching to people recently. I learned, this is a variation of a serve game I learned from Craig O'Shaughnessy. Basically, how this works is you're playing a serve game against yourself. And this is a great way to work on your serve. So you grab a basket of balls, you go back to the baseline, you step up to the deuce court. You win a point by making a first or second serve. So if you make the serve, you're up 15-love. You lose a point by either double faulting, which a lot of times I'll count for 2 points actually. I'd recommend you do that. You don't have to. It depends on your skill level. Or if you miss 2 first serves in a row, you lose the point. So let's say I'm in the deuce court. I miss my first serve. I make my second serve. I made the second serve. I'm up 15-love. I move to the ad court. Again, there's nobody returning here. It's just me, my basket of balls, and the tennis court. That's it. So that's the great thing about this game. I'm in the ad court. I'm up 15-love. I miss my first serve. Now it's 15-all, but I have to hit a second serve because if I double fault, then it's 15-30. It's worth 2 points. Let's say I make my second serve. Okay, I've missed 2 first serves in a row, so that means I lost that point. So now we're back to the deuce court, and it's 15-all. Now, if I continue to miss first serves, I will still lose that point. That's how I like to keep it. So this does a really good job of helping you recognize when you're missing consecutive first serves in a row. A lot of times on the court, we don't notice in those service games that we've missed 2 or 3 first serves in a row, and we let it kind of spiral. And that's a lot of the time the games that we get broken. So it's a really fun game you can play. Well, maybe I shouldn't say fun, but it's a really effective game you can play against yourself to help improve your focus and add a little bit of pressure. And you can play a full set this way. So you can play all the way to 6. It'll take a little bit of time and it's not super easy. If you find it getting a little bit easier, you can start to use targets. So you can divide the service box up into the left half and right half and call your spot on your first and second serve. And you have to hit the target or else you lose the point. And then you can divide it up into thirds or even fourths if you're a high level, maybe a pro player. So there's variations of it you can do, but you're basically playing a serve game against yourself, and it's a great way to add a little bit of pressure and really work on your serve. Returns, there's no specific game that I have for you, but you've got to be practicing your returns. I will say practice, if you're a club level player, practice your returns primarily cross court, at least 80%. I would definitely practice the lob return against first serve. And then down the line is kind of a secondary pattern that you might do as well. But hopefully this gave you a few things to think about before your next match, before your next practice. Lots to kind of digest there. And if you liked this episode, there's going to be more of these coming with the premium podcast feed for members. So I would really appreciate if you would check out the memberships if you're not already a member. If you are, I appreciate your support, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Doubles Only podcast. If you're interested in diving deeper into any topics I discuss, I've created doubles strategy products that allow me to bring you more podcasts and other doubles content without relying on paid ads. I have ebooks and courses that help you make better strategic decisions during matches and become the smartest player on the court. Go to thetennistribe.com/products to learn more. You can also join my free weekly double strategy newsletter that includes video lessons and more on our homepage. If you want to connect, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or email me directly, will@thetennistribe.com.